Alright guys, so over there I have a brand new box of fairings for my 2003 Honda CBR 600 F4i. And before I install those and commence with restoring this bike, I actually need to change out this alternator stator cover. As you guys can see, it's pretty scuffed up and damaged. It's not leaking or anything, but it just looks ugly, and it's well past the point where I could just, you know, spray paint over it and make it look okay again. First thing I'm going to do actually is drain all the oil out. There is going to be a little bit of oil in that stator cover, but it's not going to be very much, but I'm just going to go ahead and drain all the oil out anyways, just because it's right there, and you know, that's a brand new clean container, so I'm just going to dump it back in after this job is done. And so as you guys can see, we have our bolt right here. Sometimes you need to kind of tap it a little bit to get the bolt to come out. Make sure your washer comes out too. I do have the screen in for the tray there, but we'll go ahead and set the bolt aside and just let the bike's oil drain out. Now we'll go ahead and disconnect the battery. This is a very simple process to do. And so to disconnect your battery, you have to take your seat off. There's two bolts here that you're going to have to use either a Torx bit or an Allen key to remove. You don't want to lose these either, so I'm just going to set them there for now, but I'm going to find a safer spot for them here in a minute. Just go ahead and pull your seat back and off. It's all very simple. Now you're going to have to move your ECU out of the way to get to the top of your battery. I'm just going to kind of lay it off to the side there. So you have these two pull tabs. Just pull those up, your battery cover comes off. And then with a standard Phillips or it looks like 8mm socket, you can just pull that off and stick it aside. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So just take your negative cable, stick it out of the way so it doesn't arc on anything. So now we can move on to the outside of the cover. You want to move your idle adjuster out of the way, and then you follow this wire bundle because it's just not in the best spot. But you want to be careful when you take this off because sometimes these connections can be very brittle and you risk damaging the wires or the connector or, you know, anything in between. And so I just pulled it out. It's just got this little tab here, and since it goes in like that, you just put one of your fingers on it, push it down and pull it out. It comes right out. So now we can start removing the bolts from the stator cover. And so as you guys can see, I put a bucket underneath the cover. There is a slight possibility that there's going to be a little bit of residual oil in there. Let's go ahead and remove all these bolts. One more. And you might need to persuade it a little bit with a hammer. And like I said, there's a little bit of residual oil. There you have it. So as you guys can see, here's the inside of the old stator cover. We're going to have to pull the coil out, swap that over to the new one, and these two dowel pins, which just appear to be in here fairly loose. You can come out pretty easily. This one's loose, but the gasket's holding it in. Open it up a little bit so I can pull this dowel pin out. So we'll go ahead and remove the dowel pin. We'll stick that in the new one. Here's the long one. That goes right over there. So there you have that. I'm actually just going to leave this old gasket on here because it really doesn't matter. But we'll have to pull off this part here. So we need to get the wire bundle out. So there we go. And now just to remove the coil and this bracket bolt right here. So we'll go ahead and remove this bolt. It's a 10mm bolt. And there's the bolt. Set that aside. So now we just need a proper size Allen key, or well, these are definitely in here really tight. So you definitely want to be careful. So now with all of those removed, just transplant your coil to the new one. Nothing's left over in the old one, so we can set that aside. And it's basically just the reverse. I'm going to go ahead and start these before I cinch them down. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of silicone RTV around this valley right here before I stick that on. And you really don't need all that much. Dab in a little bit. So there you have that. So now just to put this bracket back on. And just go ahead and tighten that bolt down. One thing I'm going to do before I install the coil is use a medium strength thread locker, just enough to kind of coat those bottom threads because it'll work its way up to the rest of them. So before I torque them all down to 106 inch-pounds, this is what you're supposed to do. Now, the type of sealant that I've used on these sort of gaskets like this in the past and have very good results is this gasket shellac. It's good for any type of fluid or liquid inside of any, motor vehicle, motorcycle. On the back here, you have your directions: apply thin, even coat to both surfaces, allow a few minutes to dry, then reassemble. It resists gasoline, motor oil, antifreeze, diesel oil, water, and steam. Gasket shellac is safe because it does not contain toxic solvents. So I've had really good luck with using this stuff for years, so I'm going to use that for this. In fact, I'm actually going to pull this dowel pin out so I can coat the surface and not the pin. Just making sure that I can see all the holes and everything looks nice and even. So it looks good to me. So now I'm going to finish off with this last coat on the outside of our gasket. I'm just going to do it somewhat light. In fact, what I'm going to do is just put it on like this, and then I'm going to smear it with my glove. I'm just going to let it dry for a little bit before I reinstall it back on the bike. And so now we're ready for reinstall. So now it's all reinstalled. I'm going to check and see if there's a torque spec on it and torque them down if they need it. So now all you have to do is just reconnect your alternator wire. But it's in just fine. And then your idle adjustment. It's just going to go right there back in its little clip. And there you have it. It's easy enough. And then just tuck that wire back in its place. That's good enough for me. So now all we have to do is just put the oil back in the bike and we're good to go.